Ready. Okay, well, I'm so glad you guys made it to our training, 5 keys that you must know for a successful podcast. When I put this material together, I was thinking through the lens of looking at my show and the success my show has had, as well as many of the podcasters that I know that have successful shows. And I just was like, what are 5 essential keys that people need to know that have been like the biggest game changers for me and for other shows? And so that's what I put together here. So as I was looking back through the notes, there are some webinars you'll get on that are very, very simple and they're more workshop style. I did create the worksheets for you so that if you want to take notes, if you want to jot down your ideas, then you can. But I'm going to move fairly quickly because my goal was to give you as much valuable material in this 1 hour as possible. So it's pretty tactical. And even though we're moving quickly, I'm hoping that you'll really receive the value of what I'm bringing, because I really just wanted to make it as valuable as possible. So I'm going to share screen here and we're going to jump right in. And if everybody can go ahead and mute their microphones, that would be amazing. Okay, so here we are. Welcome to this webinar. My show is called Java with Jen podcast, Hearing God's Voice for Everyday Life. And I am a top 1% podcast. It's actually almost top 0.5. I'm just right around the corner from it. Very excited. But I decided to do this in a desire to serve other podcasters, whether you are thinking about starting one or you already have one and you're just always wanting to learn. My goal was to make this as valuable as possible and to just serve you right where you're at. So let's get through here real quick. So to introduce myself, because some of you may not know who I am, I am Jenna Lee, and like I said, Java with Jen podcast is my podcast. But I wanted you to just kind of think and imagine a little bit when this workshop is over, what it will be like that what I'm teaching you today. And again, even though we move through it quickly, if you take what I'm saying and you act on it and you implement it, it will literally shave months or years off of the learning curve. And it's going to put you steps ahead of other podcasts that don't have this information, other new podcasters that don't have this information. So this 60-minute call can save you a lot of time and really shorten your momentum trajectory. Okay, so a little bit about myself. We'll move through this quick because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on who I am. I want to get into the material for you. But I've been a podcaster since 2017, and but I've really been doing it weekly since like 2020. I'm a mom of 4 teenage boys who eat everything in the house. Absolutely. My second son is 6'5" and he just turned 16 a couple months ago. So we're like, how big are you going to be, kid? He eats enough. He eats probably the same as the other 3 combined. My husband is Steven, and we are pastors over here in Texas. I started coaching podcasters because, which I'll talk about in a moment, the learning curve of figuring out what I was doing took me 3 to 4 years. It was very overwhelming, and it nearly did prevent me from starting and having a successful podcast. And so my goal is to empower your voice, removing some of those hurdles and frustration and overwhelm, especially wasted time or wasted money. So if you are in the right place, if you're ready to stop daydreaming about having a podcast and actually get one started, no more excuses, no more confusion, and you're ready to take action. You're like, we just need to get this done. And it's a really good time to start a podcast right now, which I'll tell you about in a moment. You know that you don't want to just start a podcast, but you want one that is successful, reaches people, and serves your business goals if you have a business. If you're ready to make this your best year, which I know we're at the end of it, but you could literally have your podcast up by the end of the year, and make that dream happen. It is your time right now to do that. Now, I am going to talk to you guys at the end, which you probably already are aware of, but I wanted this to be valuable, but at the end, I will let you know how you can work with me if you are looking for a podcast coach to work with. Not everybody will. That is totally okay. I made it where this webinar is going to offer you a lot of value, whether you work with me or not. But if you are looking for a coach, I'm going to talk with you at the end about how you can work with me if you need to. Um, so this workshop is not for you if you didn't realize it was a workshop about podcasting, or you're not very serious about starting a podcast. You're maybe like just kind of thinking about it, throwing ideas around, but you're not convinced that you want to start one. Or maybe you hate podcasts because you're more of a writer and you're like, I would rather just have a blog. Well, then you probably need to be on a blogging webinar. But for today, like I said, because I've made this super valuable, lots of good material, my suggestion to get the most out of it is to put your phone away, close all the tabs, get all the distractions out of your view so that you can focus. It's just 60 minutes. And so I'm going to push through this stuff really quickly and it's going to be really good. I encourage you to take notes. And if you printed out your workbook, amazing. If not, just have some paper close by because you are going to want to jot down some things as we move through. And as I'm talking, there will be a lot of this material on the slides, but there are some things that I'll be sharing with you that are not on the slides that you're going to want to take note of. Some really like tools you can use and practical stuff. So make sure you're listening for all of that. And then if you'd like, I would love if you took a screenshot at some point in the webinar and throw it up on Instagram and tag me and let me know that you're tuning in so then I can be friends with you on Instagram as well. And Java with Jen is my handle if you do that. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to get firstly clear on who your podcast is for and what problem it solves to attract listeners. So that's the first one. Second one, we're going to cover multiple keys around consistency, aesthetic, and audio quality and promotion and how those are really important elements to have in place for your max growth. And then third, I'm going to tell you what has been my secret sauce for growing my show. And I don't hear other people talk about this, and there's a reason for that, but it's very unique and very, very effective. And I'll be sharing that towards the end. And like I mentioned, I will share how you can work with me today. I just put that out there because some people, I just don't want you to feel like you're being blindsided by a pitch or whatever at the end. I feel like personally, when I started, I couldn't find a podcast coach and I would have loved one. And so I feel like it's not kind to not let you know how you could work with me if that's what you're looking for. So at the end, I'll also share with you how you can get your hands on these planner sheets. Now, this is something I created as a tool for myself that I still use for my podcast. My students use them. I noticed that between planning episodes and interviewing guests and planning for, pre-interview calls and then the actual interview and then the launch day of the episode and show notes and links. And there was a lot to keep up with when it came to being organized. And so I created these so that I could streamline my process, make sure I wasn't missing anything, and stay organized. And my students use them as well. They're super valuable. And I'll share with you how you can get your hands on those at the end. Okay, so the backstory. For the longest time, this is my story, how I got into podcasting. For the longest time, I wanted to preach and teach. But the lack of opportunity, even though I was married to a pastor, sent me into the podcasting world. And when I was single, I had lots of opportunity to teach and use my voice and, get the message out that was inside of me. But when I married my husband and moved to Texas, I actually did not have opportunity, even though I was a pastor's wife. It was very strange. May have been the Lord kind of pivoting me. But because of that, I decided, you know what? I am going to start a podcast. It sounded easy. It shows you how much I didn't know. It sounded easy and sounded like something I could do kind of on the sly while I was figuring out what I was doing. But I was figuring it out all on my own. And I spent 3 to 4 years learning all the things. I attended a lot of free webinars like this one, which is part of why I was excited to do one. But those webinars were on marketing and on small businesses and online business and e-commerce and Pinterest. They weren't necessarily podcast webinars. So I still was piecemealing everything together. I was super overwhelmed. And in fact, one time my son came upstairs and I was trying to figure out how to send an email and use MailChimp. Some of you guys might have heard of MailChimp before. And literally, MailChimp makes me want to lose my Christianity. Like, I wanted to spit and cuss every time I tried to use it. So I was frustrated, I was in tears, and I was about to throw my computer across the room. And my son came up here. He came in this back door right behind me, and he walks in, he sees me in this terrible state, and he kind of slowly backs up. And so my little 6'5" son sneaks downstairs and comes back up with a cup of hot tea. And he was like, Mom, is your podcast making you mad again? And I was like, yes. And so he knew it was just the journey was hard, right? And so that's what I'm trying to help you avoid. Also, if you guys can double check that your mics are muted, I'm hearing a little bit of noise back there. So it was rough without a coach. And so I wanted to show you guys kind of what my progression was, because it gives you kind of a real life peek into what it can be like starting, or at least if you take the long, slow path like I did. So if you notice, I started it in 2017, and there's a screenshot down here in the bottom. And this was my first episode and my only episode for that entire year. If you can go ahead and mute, I'm not sure where the noise is coming from, but somebody's got some noise coming through. So 2017, I did one episode. And then we lost our home in Hurricane Harvey. I know there's a lot of hurricanes going on right now, and people are experiencing that right now. And it's pretty intense of a process to walk through. And so we lost our home in Hurricane Harvey, had 10 feet of water in our home. And so that caused me, obviously, to put everything on pause. And so, but I went back to it in 2018 and I got 4 episodes up. And then I did in 2019, I got 9 episodes up. So almost one a month. I was moving slow, folks. And then we took a ministry sabbatical for 10 months. And so I didn't work on it for 10 months. And so I still came back to it in 2020. I was like, I will figure this out. And so I did 29 episodes that year. And so that's about 2 a month, right? And then 34 episodes in 2021, 37 in 2022. It wasn't until 2023 that I really successfully was managing to do a weekly episode. I mean, the other 2 years prior, I was doing weekly episodes, but I took breaks in the summer. And so that's why those numbers are lower. And so this year I'm on track for about 55 episodes. And so as you can see, there is a progression, there's a journey to it, but I took the long, slow way. If the students who work with me, they jump straight in with the immediate momentum. It's so much quicker. And so after the years of putting this information together, I started to learn from my mistakes. I made some mistakes along the way, and I'll share with you a few of what those were. But people started asking, once they started seeing the success of my show, I was having some really VIP type guests on my show. I was starting to rank globally, top 10%, top 5%, top 1%. And so people started coming to me asking if I could help them with theirs. So now my show is top 1%, like I mentioned before, almost top 0.5. Very, very pumped about that. It's listened to in 107 countries, and it's been there for at least a year. I've been in that many countries. My goal is to be listened to in every country. That's the goal. But it's charting regularly in multiple nations: Mexico, New Zealand, Australia, the US. And it's hit charts in over 21 countries, most of them continuously, like many, many times over. I've had over 90 incredible guests, like Sean Bowles, different movie directors, the voice of Barbie, Mrs. USA, various folks. And I want you to, as I'm talking about this, imagine yourself in that position, because this is what it would be like for you. And you would have these kinds of milestones in your journey as well. And so I finally started figuring out what was going to work, but it does not have to take you as long as it was taking me. Here's a glimpse at some of the people I've had on. This is Bria. She's Mrs. USA 2021. She's also a functional medicine practitioner. This was Pastor Samuel Rodriguez when he was giving the inaugural prayer at President Trump's inauguration. This is Chris Anthony Lansdowne. She is the sweetest woman. She came on my show. I haven't published the episode yet, but I interviewed her a few weeks ago. And she shared about what it was like to interview at Mattel to become the voice of Barbie and how she helped shape what Barbie became. It was amazing. Sean Bowles, one of my personal ministry heroes, and I've been on his show. He's been on my show, and it's been really neat. He had me come coach some of his entrepreneurs in podcasting as well. So your heroes could come on your show, and that's the beautiful thing, is that you'll be able to connect with people that you could never have connected with if you didn't have a podcast and a platform, a reason for connecting. And so it's exciting. Some of the mistakes I made, though, was I was learning from too many people. I had too many experts in my inbox from too many directions talking about too many things, and it caused a lot of overwhelm and confusion. I was too cute and creative with my titles. And so instead of knowing how to write titles for my episodes that would help me be found online, I was just trying to be cute and creative, and it didn't help me get heard. And so we'll talk about that in a moment. And I was thinking the whole time, if you build it, surely they'll come, right? You have a podcast. It's in the podcast world. People will find you. That's not how it goes. There are strategies for growth that you have to use. So those are some of the mistakes I made. So maybe you can relate to some of my process, some of my story, right? That the process may feel overwhelming. And if you haven't started your podcast yet, you may just simply relate to the early stages of what I described, like that it's confusing. What equipment do I need? What equipment do I not need? Once I create my show, how do I know people are going to listen? I hear that question a lot. How will they find me? What if my show is not good? What if I'm missing important pieces and I don't realize it? So some of that is going to change today. All of that can change in working together. But if you're ready to dive in, why don't you drop in the chat? I'm ready. Let me know if you have a podcast already or if you want to start a podcast. Put that in the chat because I'm curious where everybody's at. And we're gonna dive into this. Grab your worksheets, and I'm excited to get into this material. All right, so the first key, which I told you we're going to cover, is how to attract your ideal audience. A lot of people start shows, create shows, but they don't even know how to attract their audience, right? And so the 3P formula is what I teach my students, and so I'm giving you some good material right here, straight out the gate. And the 3Ps are, you need to know who are the people you serve, what is the problem that you are solving, and what is the promise that you're making. Who are the people you serve? What is the problem you solve? And what is the promise that you're making? So a lot of people will be like, I want to have a fitness podcast. That's amazing. A fitness podcast is a great place to start, but you have to get way more clear on who you're serving, because the more clear you get, the more you attract the right people to you. So instead of saying, I have a fitness podcast, if you frame it with the 3Ps, it would sound something like this. I have a podcast where I help busy moms, that's who you serve, get fit, that's the promise you're making, in 15, or sorry, that's the problem you're solving, getting fit. And then the promise you make is in 15 minutes a day, you're helping them get fit, right? With macros, micro workouts, and meal planning. So the people you serve is busy moms. Problem you solve, you're helping them get fit. The promise that you're making is they're going to do it in 15 minutes a day with these 3 things. And honestly, that last half with macros, micro workouts, and meal planning, you don't really even need that part. It's just a little bit more clear. And so that suddenly makes it more attractive to the people who are like, ooh, I'm a busy mom. You just said my name. I want to get fit totally 100%. 15 minutes a day, you must know me. You must know my life, right? And so now suddenly it's way more appealing and it's way more attractive. And so if you're going to have a podcast, you need to know exactly who you're serving, because a busy mom of young children is going to have a different fitness journey even than a grandmother in her 50s who's going through menopause, right? they're going to have a different journey. Their fitness approach is going to be different. And so getting really clear helps you attract the right people to your show. Drop in the chat if that's new information for you. Like if that's an aha, if that surprises you, if that helps bring a little bit of clarity, just drop a comment in the chat and let me know. The second key, and this one is simple, and that's the beauty of it. Success sometimes is just in the simple things. The growth magic of consistency and frequency. So these play two different important roles. Consistency is a key to building trust with your audience, which is important in this whole process of being successful, building trust and retaining your audience. So, for example, if you're gonna, like you guys saw in my little journey of how many times I published episodes, in the beginning of my journey, you guys saw I had, 9 episodes in 1 year. Well, that is not consistent, right? 9 episodes, like how did I do that? Every 6 weeks? Like how does that work out? And so the inconsistency that I had is one of the things that prevented me from growing, right? Because people never knew if they go by my podcast, is there going to be a new episode? They didn't know. So, but the idea behind this is like, just like your favorite TV show, especially back in the day when we all had cable and we didn't have like DVR and all that kind of stuff. Well, we had recently, my family was enjoying the show Loki, and we watched it on Disney Plus, and we found that it would drop on Disney Plus on Thursdays at 9 p.m. So every Thursday at 9 p.m., my boys would all end up in the living room and we would watch Loki when it would drop on Disney Plus. And so it's the same kind of thing when you're consistent about dropping your episodes at a certain day, certain time. Mine go up Tuesday mornings at 5 a.m. Then when you do that, people learn that they can expect a new episode from you and they can listen to it on their drive to work, on their drive home from work, on their lunch break, when they're doing dishes that day, whatever. They build it into their routine. So your consistency builds trust and it builds that comeback dynamic with your listeners. They know they can come back and get new material from you. So it helps you retain them as well. Now, what I found is that frequency, which is how often are you posting an episode, does impact your growth directly. It's not the only thing that impacts your growth, but it is a key. And I have found this just from observation and paying attention to lots and lots of different podcasters. And what I have found is that when a podcast is growing very rapidly, usually they are posting more than once a week. Now, the sweet spot for everyone who's starting, I usually recommend 1 episode a week because it's kind of like television shows, it's kind of a rhythm that we're used to. If you do twice a week, or let's say you just throw in bonus episodes a couple times a month, that will actually boost the speed at which you grow. I had a student, my first round of podcasters, I had about a dozen of them in my mastermind. One of them, he was posting once a month because he worked like 90 hours a week. And so that's all he could maintain. And then another one, she was a full-time author, podcaster, whatever, like she was able to just do it full-time. And so she was doing once a week, but she would drop 2 bonus episodes a month. So she was doing 6 episodes a month. Well, she, out of all my students, she was hitting charts by week number 6. New podcast, brand new. And by 6 weeks in, she, had charted in 4 countries, including the US, which is difficult to do. And she was in top 10% of podcasts globally in 6 weeks. And the only difference, because she had a quality show, but so did my other student. All of them did, but him as an example. The only difference was her frequency in posting, and she was a bit more active on social media. And so frequency does make a difference. So that's just kind of a free tip right there when you're considering how often you want to do it. There's lots of different ways you can do frequency. Like if you have an hour-long episode, just cut it into 2 and put both up on different days in the same week. It doesn't have to become more work. You can just think through how you can do more frequent episodes. And so this is where my planner sheets come in that I mentioned earlier. Kind of helps you strategize your goals, your publishing dates, and all of that. Total game changer. So actually, before I move on, drop in the chat Which one of those was either one of those surprising to you, consistency or frequency? Was either one of those surprising to you? Let me know in the chat what you thought about those. For me, felt like a beautiful light bulb moment when I realized that frequency affects your growth. That felt like a shortcut. Okay, number 3. The third essential key, and listen, I cannot emphasize this enough. People are finally catching on to the importance of this. But even though your podcast may be an audio platform and you may not have video attached to yours, you still have to brand it and it still needs to look appealing. And because 80% of our decisions, people make 80% of their decisions with their eyes. That is why they put wax on our apples. That is why they genetically modify fruit so that it grows more perfectly. That is why they use mannequins in the stores. That is why they make commercials and make them really pretty. That's why when they take pictures of food that put on the menu, they don't even use food half the time. They use other objects to make it look better. It's because 80% of our decisions are made with our eyes. So with your podcast, that means your artwork needs to be professional and polished looking. You need to have a logo that's recognizable. It means you need to have your colors, fonts, and your imaging need to be consistent. The easiest way to do that, honestly, is colors. It's one of the easiest ways to be consistent online. If you notice, I'm wearing my red blazer, which I did wear yesterday, or pink blazer. It was just easy to throw the same one on. But I have pink flowers behind me. That's important. I wear pink lipstick when I do these things. I've got a blue turquoise ring on because that's my secondary color. Your workbook is in pink. And so that's part of the branding. It just makes it more polished looking. It's more recognizable because our eyes pick up on that stuff really quick. So that is a simple way that you can have a very polished look is with your colors, your fonts, and your imaging, meaning similar images that make sense to what the message of your brand is. So a fitness podcast is going to use pictures of healthy food, of weights, of workout clothes, working out, stuff like that's going to make sense to your brand. One little tip, if you're looking at making this a priority in your process, is getting brand photos taken. As you guys are watching through the slides, you'll see some pictures of me in there, and you'll notice they look nice. They're professional looking pictures. That's because I had a photo shoot and I wore colors that are in my brand scheme. And we took a whole lot of pictures so that I could use them for things like this, because it just goes that extra mile to have a professional, polished look. You can do that. You don't have to hire a photographer. I actually just had a friend take my pictures. She's good with her camera. She just did it as a favor, and we've done it a couple times, and she's kind of my go-to, and she always does a really great job. So there are shortcuts. Have a friend that's really good with their cell phone, get at least a couple headshots of you. You're going to need those as a podcaster. And I would also, side note, when you do your pictures, wear solid colors. Don't do prints. Unless the print is part of your brand, don't do prints, because prints age faster, and they are busy and they're a little distracting. And so prints just don't translate as well in pictures. So that is the third one. Let me know if that is kind of eye-opening to you. Here's an example of bad artwork to good artwork. This is a lady who actually hired me to, she just did 1 hour coaching with me. And on the left is the artwork she had when she hired me. And I was one of the first things that we addressed. I said, hey, we need to do better on the artwork. So let me help you out. So on our 1 hour call, I created this artwork for her on the right. And she was very excited. She's like, I knew my artwork wasn't good, but I didn't know how to fix it. And so this is what I did for her. If you don't want to figure out how to do it yourself, or you don't know what to do, you can use Canva. Canva has great templates that you can just kind of tweak and adjust and make them your own with your own imaging, your own colors. But if you don't even want to do that, you can hire somebody on Fiverr or on Upwork pretty affordably, or find someone that you know who's good at using Canva. Or heck, you could hire me for an hour and we could do your artwork. Okay, so number 4, Obviously, you're going to get them to click on your show with your aesthetic and your show description, but you're going to get them to stick around with their ears. So you can have a beautiful show, you can be all over social media, but if your audio is irritating to listen to, they're not going to stick around because there's only so much that we can tolerate when it comes to listening to bad audio, right? If you listen to someone's podcast, this used to be my total pet peeve. When I would listen to their podcast and it sounded like they were talking in a tin can, drove me crazy. I would not listen to those podcasts. If you record in a room like the dining room, it's going to sound like you're talking in a tin can because the sound is going to bounce. Sound moves, right? It bounces off of hard objects. So you want to be in a space where, like this is carpeted upstairs. I do that on purpose. I'm using a professional microphone because that is important as well. If you don't have a room where you can record, you can go in a closet if it's not video, or you can record in your car as well. And the reason why is those do great at absorbing the sound. So some little tips at having good audio, it doesn't need to be complicated, right? All of this can be done simply and cleanly. But one of the most important things to do to make sure your audio is quality is just listen back to it. When you're listening back, there was one time I recorded an episode or a commercial or something short. And I listened back and I was like, what is that noise in the background? And I realized my neighbor across the street had a diesel truck and it was running in his driveway for like an hour. He just left it running. And I was like, I texted him. I said, Mr. Terry, can you please turn off your truck? I'm trying to record and it's showing up on my recording. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. And so just stuff like that. But I didn't know until I listened back that it showed up on the audio. So listen back to your audio. Some of the essentials when it comes to equipment for quality audio is a microphone. And you don't have to spend hundreds. Like you can find a quality microphone under $100 on Amazon. Headphones, because headphones will keep from the bounce back sound of your speakers coming back into the microphone. It prevents that from happening. So it cleans up your audio a little bit. And then a padded room, not because you're going crazy, but because you want to absorb the sound. Okay, so that's very simple. That's like the simplest way to get clean audio. It's not complicated. I will tell you, and this is also if you're ever on someone else's show, even before you start a podcast, do not, I repeat, do not. In fact, in the chat, say, I will not use Apple AirPods. I will not use Apple AirPods. Do not do them. They are awful. They're always terrible. I just saved your interview. Do not use Apple AirPods. You're welcome. But if you need to clean up your audio, let's say the levels are a little unbalanced or it just feels like it could do better, you can use Audacity. I believe it's an app that you download, but just Google Audacity editing platform. And I believe it's something that you download to your computer and it's free. It's totally free. And I know professional musicians that use Audacity to edit and do all of their production, even though they're doing like big production stuff, and it's free. So Audacity is a really great tool to have in your back pocket. Okay, so if any of these surprised you, which of these things, or maybe it's simpler, maybe you're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be that easy. Drop in the chat what you thought about this key. We're going to keep moving. All right, the fifth key, just because you build it does not mean they will come. I mentioned that that was a mistake I'd made, right? Just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. There is a strategy behind marketing your podcast, okay? The average podcaster, listen to this. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, this sets the bar for how to make it, right? The average podcaster has a lifespan of only 7 episodes. 7. In fact, now they're saying it's down to even as low as 3. 3 to 7 episodes is the average lifespan. That's what we call pod fade. That's where a podcast fades out of existence. You want to avoid pod fade. So I always tell my students, shoot for at least a year at least a year. Be consistent with your podcast at least a year, but really 2 years is better because it does take some time for that snowball to start rolling downhill. It takes some time for the momentum of your hard work. I didn't feel real momentum probably until around 100 episodes, which that took me a couple years to get there. And so once I hit about 100, something shifts and people take your show more seriously. They realize you're in it to win it. You start to build a rapport in the podcasting community. You start to build more connections. You start to get better guests on. You really know what you're doing. You're learning how to strategize. There's something that happens when you cross that 100 episode mark that shifts it into another gear, especially if you're obviously taking your show seriously. And so a few tips for how to market your show. Now, listen, guys, I'm giving you so much good stuff here. I hope you guys run with this. I'm giving you a lot of really good stuff here. 4 ways you can market. And listen, I thought through what are the things that move the needle the most. These are the things that move the needle the most. 1, guesting on other shows and having guests on your show who have audiences. Guest on other shows, having guests on your show who have audiences. And of course, you share their stuff and you ask them to share your stuff. That is the number one way. We see it happen in the movies. If an actor like the Wolverine and Deadpool movie, you're seeing those guys on all these talk shows. They're everywhere. You see their commercials, you see them on cereal boxes, you see them on talk shows. So if they go on tours where they go on talk shows, you could go on tours where you go on podcasts. Same concept. They do that to get it in front of as many people as possible. And you can do that. It doesn't cost money to get on other shows typically. And so that's one of the primary ways to grow your show, guesting and having guests and having them share your stuff. Second way is being on social media consistently and growing your email list. So they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin. Social media is how you promote your content, but it's also how you get in front of more new people. Obviously, the world is big and everybody is on social media. So it's a very simple way, though it does take some work, to be active and put good content out on social media, but it's very effective. I have found that when, like recently, I've been busy, so I have not been super active with my social media promoting my episodes, and my episode plays reflect it. When I'm promoting my episodes a lot, my plays are much higher. And so there is something to be said for just reminding the world, hey, here's the value that you're going to get from my show this week. Now, your email list is different in that on social media, only 2 to 6% of your followers actually see anything that you post. So let's say you've been in the hospital and you've posted about it on Facebook a couple times, and your friend texts you out of nowhere. This is literally has happened in my life. And your friend, except I was the friend that was texting out of nowhere. And I was like, hey, how's everything been going? She's like, my husband almost died and we've all been in the hospital all week long. I've been talking about it on Facebook. And I'm like, I never saw any of your posts. And she didn't buy it at first. And I was like, sister, people don't see stuff on social media sometimes. It's only 2 to 6% of your following will see your stuff. So it's not a reliable way to get in front of your existing audience. It's a good way to get in front of new people. It's not a reliable way to get in front of the people that are following you. It's set up that way because they want you to pay to play. They want you to pay to promote your stuff. But your email list, 30 to 60% of your email list will open your emails. And so email is a much more reliable way to get in front of people that are already in your community. So promoting your show on social media and letting your email list know about it so they can click play are 2 kind of sides of the same coin in how you can promote your show. Okay. The third one is using SEO, which is smart keywords, using keywords in your titles of your episodes that people would be over on Google searching if they're looking for that kind of content. So let's say your episode, will go with the fitness one, is lose 5 pounds in 30 days with macro tracking. So those are all keywords you're going to want to use in your title. Make it very clear. So if someone's in Google, how can I lose 5 pounds? How can I lose 5 pounds quickly? Then it will pull up that because it's in your title, right? Lose 5 pounds in 30 days with macro tracking. So you have to use smart keywords. When my podcast started the first 3 or 4 years, it was only called Java with Jen. I did not have a subtitle that told people what my show was about. Rookie mistake. So finally, by season 4, I was like, this drives me crazy. I need to do something to help people know what they're going to get. And so I added a subtitle, Hearing God's Voice for Everyday Life, because that's what they get on my show. And sure enough, once I added the subtitle, immediately my listens went up by like 30%. And that's because now people knew what they're going to get when they come to my show. So it's more clear who my show is for. But also, if people are in Google, how do I learn to hear God's voice? Or in podcasting app, hear God's voice, then it pulls my show up. And so the keywords are very, very important. All right, I'm going to keep moving here. Publishing to multiple platforms is the 4th tip I'm going to give you. The more places that your podcast has a play button on the internet, the more likely it is to get plays. So instead of just being on Apple Podcasts, you want to be on Apple, on Google Cast, on Spotify, on Pocket Cast, on Podbean, on all these different places where people can listen to your show. Now, most hosting sites, which is where it's like home base for your show, most hosting sites already have at least a handful to a dozen platforms integrated with them, so you can easily publish to those. And once they're connected, then all you have to do is publish your episode and it just sprays it out to all those locations. You can also go externally to, let's say there's a really popular one in India. You can go to that one and register your podcast independently. But doing that allows you to show up in more countries and in more listeners' ears. So drop in the chat, which one of these tips was super helpful for you to hear? Which one of those? Or did it surprise you about pod fade and the lifespan of your average listener or your average podcaster? Drop that in the chat. Okay, so the last secret sauce tip that I have for you, and this is mine. I don't hear anyone else teach on this, and it's because it's a faith-based tip. Now, I'm faith-based. Obviously, I've made that clear by now. If you're not faith-based, that's okay. This will still work for you because prayer still works. And so that's my secret sauce tip, is having an intercessory team. Now, you guys will notice in your notes, I have 3 different ways that you can connect with an intercessor, or an intercessor is a fancy word for someone who prays a lot. Okay. And so it looks like this. It's got 3 spaces on it. And the top one is, once you have your show, a lot of people don't know this is a thing. I just had a 6-time Emmy award-winning actor and movie producer on my show last week. His name's Steph Kars, and he didn't know about the Hollywood Prayer Network. And so I told him, you should go sign up with the Hollywood Prayer Network and get an intercessor assigned to you. And so you can do that. It's free. If you are in media and if you have a podcast, you're in media, you can have an intercessor assigned to you. And then second suggestion would be, ask a small group of people, maybe your mom, your aunt, your sister, people that care about you and they care about your success. Maybe your neighbor that you know prays. Maybe there's an old lady at church that you know really loves to pray. Go to them and say, hey, I'm trying to start and grow a podcast. Would you pray for my show? Can I keep you updated on things to pray about? They're likely to say yes, because it feels like a privilege and an honor to pray for someone's mission and help their dream come true. And so go find a couple people and if you're not faith-based, you probably know someone who is. Maybe someone at work, maybe someone on your street. You probably know someone who is. And so even if you're not faith-based, put their faith to work and ask them if they'll pray for your show. And you will no doubt see the Lord work on your behalf. It could change your life. And then I would also say, put prayer on your regular prayer list. So I have decrees and declarations that I make every day. And whenever I'm thinking about it, I pray for my listeners. I pray for my show. I pray for my content. I pray for my guests. And I have a cool story here. This is Manuel Reyes, this little picture. Manuel Reyes, that was episode 8, way back in the beginning. And this was when I realized the value of having an intercessory team. So I have a friend who they pray for people in the arts and entertainment industry. And I messaged her and I said, "Hey, I just have a hair to have a celebrity on my show. I know I'm a new podcaster. I know it's a small show, but I just really want to have a celebrity on my show. So would you ask the team to pray that I would have a celebrity?" And she was like, "Absolutely, we're on it." So later that day, I am on Instagram and I'm looking in stories, just peeking through who's posting. And Manuel had some stories, so I went to watch them. And the chat was open and he was asking questions about podcasting. So I was like, well, I could tell him what I know. And so I started messaging him and we started a conversation, went on for 30 minutes or so. And then at the end of the conversation, he was starting to say goodbye. And I said, "Hey, real quick, it's always been a dream of mine to have you and your wife on my podcast." His wife is Angela Johnson. She's a comedian. She's known for her skit Bon Qui Qui or the nail salon skit. Go look those up on YouTube. They're hilarious. Anyway, so he said, "Well, I can't speak for my wife. She's very busy, but I would be happy to come on your podcast." And I was like, I was so excited. So I called my sister. I was like, "Help me figure this out. I don't know how to interview someone long distance yet." Figured it out, had him on the show. You can still go back and listen to it. It was a really great interview. And it was an answer to prayer, a direct answer to prayer. Me being a top 1% podcaster is a direct response of prayer. That was something I set as my goal last year. And I said, "Lord, I would like to be a top 1% podcaster. Can you make it happen?" And he helped my show grow. And so this is a secret sauce. I call it that because people underestimate the power of prayer in your corner and how much God cares about what you're doing. And so write in the chat if that's new information for you. Well, it's probably not new information. Everybody knows prayer is important, but we forget, right? We forget to prioritize it. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to tell you, if you're a business owner, if you've considered podcasting to work with your business, you're actually very well positioned to help your business because podcasting is a great way to bring in leads. It's a great move for business people. 10 years ago, businesses started blogging because they were like, "Wow, this is a really great way to reach people and be an expert." Well, now all the businesses are shifting into podcasting because they're like, "This is even more personal than blogging because they can hear our voice." It's a great way to establish yourself as an expert, to continue to serve your clients or prospective clients. It's a really great way to bring in new leads and create revenue streams. I teach my students how to create streams of income. If you don't have a business already, I teach you how you can potentially create a business out of your podcast by creating resources that your audience will want. And so that's kind of like side extra. If you're in the business sphere, making money from your podcast is possible. But obviously, that was a lot of content and it was a lot of material. And I know I moved quickly, but I want to get through to the end of this because I want to make sure that I respect your time. You guys came and spent an hour with me and I'm grateful. And I want to make time for Q&A as well. So here's the truth. You do not need to, and this is the value of working with a coach. You don't have to continue guessing and piecemealing and feeling overwhelmed in order to get your podcast started literally this month. What are we? It's almost November. You could have your show up in November for sure by Christmas. Here's a client that I had, Tiffany. She came to me. Her show had been up for 2 years, and she came to coach with me through my whole mastermind program. And in her 2 years, she only had like 300 downloads. And so I said, "You know what? I can help you. Let's tighten this up. Let's make this better." So she put in a lot of hard work, but she did what I said. And she said, "I'm thrilled to share that my show's listenership has already doubled in just a week and a half since the relaunch." So what she had accomplished in 2 years, she accomplished in a week and a half after working with me. That's some incredible time savings, right? Ain't nobody got time to waste time trying to figure it out on your own. Literally, we don't. The digital world moves too quickly. And so it was so great to get to work with her. Here is the student I was talking about, Krista. And these are screenshots of the messages she sent me. Over here, this was at her 6-week mark. And here was her global ranking of top 10%. And then she sent me a message around the same time. She said, I'm ranked in 4 countries now, number 4 in Peru. Now, this student, she went on to create a second show I didn't even know about. She told me after the fact. And her second show is they're short little 2-minute, 3-minute podcast episodes. She has been riding the charts at number 1 in multiple African countries for multiple weeks. She's just been chilling out at podcast number 1 in her category. And she was an introvert. She came to me, she said, I'm for sure conquering a fear by using my voice to reach others and share the love of Christ. Podcasting for me as an introvert is uncomfortable. And I'm so thankful Jenny helped remove these obstacles so I could focus on my message. And so she came to me very last minute. She was actually a guest on my show. And she signed up very last minute because she was scared. And she was like, Jenny, I just don't know if I can do this. La, la, la. She finally was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it. And you're going to help me. And I was like, okay. And she has been one of my most successful students as an introvert, unsure what she was doing, scared to death with both of her podcasts hitting top charts. And so it can be done and you can do it. If she can do it, you can do it. So if you've been in this cycle, and this is the cycle I went through, you're unsure how to start a podcast. So you turn and brainstorm, go to YouTube and watch all the videos. YouTube University is what we call it. And you get really excited because there's lots of great material there. But you start to get confused because there's so much good material there. It's like, where do I start? And so then analysis paralysis can set in and overwhelm you. And then you quit on the process before you actually really even begin because you just don't know where to focus your attention, what pieces are most important, where to put your energy. You don't want it to take 3 or 4 years like it took for me, right? You want to do it more quickly and more successfully. So like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to explain how you can work with me if you're interested. Step 1, very simply, would be to get on a call with me to see if this is a good fit, if this is a good program for where you're at and what you want to do. I will be honest, if I think that one of my other offerings is better, or one of my other approaches to starting your show, or if maybe you're not quite ready, or if you would be better suited to blogging, like I will be honest with you because I know the work it takes to run a podcast, and I will let you know if I feel like your podcast idea has merit and will be a good show. I'll be honest with you. And so that's why we get on that call, so that you can ask your questions and see if this is going to be a good fit. Once you do that, if you decide to enroll with me, you're going to enroll and schedule our trainings. And by being on this webinar, some of you, I emailed me and I said, hey, come on the webinar because there's a discount I'm offering. You're going to save an additional $1,000 today. And I always do that because you came and spent an hour with me, that your time is precious. And so that's a way that I kind of honor your time. And then step 3 would be we coach together and we launch your show in 2 days of coaching. Now, it's over the course of a couple of weeks because there's work that has to happen in between those coaching days. But we coach for 2 solid days, one-on-one. I personally do not know any other podcast coaches that offer one-on-one custom coaching to get your show up. I created this program because I was thinking about business owners and ministers primarily who are short on time, but they need to get it done. And so that's actually why I put the 2-day coaching together. And it has proven to be really, really effective for people. So here's what could happen. You could keep piecemealing your show, maybe missing important elements, or you could get custom step-by-step help with me to get your show up without all the guesswork. So I'm saving you headaches. I'm saving you lost time. I'm saving you wasted money, right? You could continue spending money on equipment and platforms and software that you might not need. I've had to tell many students, no, you don't need that. Kind of like when you first have a baby, you buy all the things because you think you need all the things, and then you realize you didn't need half of it, right? Same thing. This is your baby. Or you could work with me and know exactly where to spend your money and where not to. I teach my students, this is what you need right now, and this is what you can upgrade to later. And so, because I really like to help them keep the cost down, the overhead cost of running your show, I keep it as minimal as possible. That way, it doesn't create a financial burden for you. I want your show to last long term. And if there's a lot of burden, it's not going to go as long because it's going to it's going to time out, right? So you could keep guessing at how to grow your show and find your audience, because there's a strategy for podcast growth. Or you can get my guidance. I can help you. Put a lot of energy into learning how to do this. You could spend years wondering and missing out on how to create income from your show, because there are, again, very strategic ways to do that. Or you can learn from me how to set it up and create income from the beginning of your podcast. Now, growing a show and growing your income around your show, those do take time. They are not overnight wonders. There does take time and work. So I'm not going to give you a disillusioned version of the story. It takes time, it takes work. But knowing what to do and when to do it will help you get there faster. Kind of the story of life, right? So if what you're doing is not working, I really do want to help you fix that. You do deserve to have a show you've been dreaming about. Just like I had a right to get my voice into the world, even if there wasn't opportunity over here, you have a right to get your voice into the world. And let's be honest, we live in the best time for this. 30 years ago, you had to pay to get your voice into the world. Now you can publish your own book without a publisher, and you can start your own podcast. Like, there are so many ways to get your voice into the world. It is the best time to be alive, in my opinion, considering those things. So here's what my 2-day jumpstart intensive looks like. This is for you, especially if you're an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, or a minister. If you're outside of those, that's okay. We could still talk. But I find that those 4 groups of people are very compelled with their message, and they really want to get their message into the world. And so they usually show up with the grit and the drive to make it happen. So if that's you, this is perfect for you. It's very natural to move into podcasting if that's where you live. The 2-day jumpstart comes with a number of different tools included. So not only do we coach together, we have a setup for success call, which is an hour and a half. And that's where we get all your equipment, your software set up and get you kind of queued up so you're ready to go with the coaching. We do 2 solid 8-hour days of coaching. And then we have a follow-up call a couple weeks after, where I jump back on with you and make sure that there's no holes in your process, everything's moving smoothly, your launch went well, all of those kinds of things, because I want to make sure, again, having a show, starting a show is one thing, having a successful show is another, and I want you to have a successful show. So this 2-day jumpstart is those 4 calls. It also comes with this workbook that I have built over time. It's about 140 pages. It is a resource book. I had one student who coached with me who has coached with one of the nation's top podcast coaches now. She exists now. She didn't exist years ago. And she told me, you know what? Your workbook alone gave me more value than I got in her whole program. She said, I would have easily paid $400 just for this workbook, not including your videos, not including your coaching. $400. I don't sell it for $400, but that's the value. It's that resourceful. It comes with the digital course, which is the videos from my mastermind I mentioned. It's the videos. And so the reason I include that is because if there's an area that you want to deep dive on, let's say the marketing side and tapping into some of the deeper strategies of growth, or the money making side, and you want to tap into what are some more money making things, then you can deep dive those on your own time with the digital course. So it's just, again, more resources at your fingertips. The planner sheets comes with all of this. So that's where the planner sheets come in. You can get your hands on it with this program. And this I'm very excited about is the podcast network. You'll see right here, Imagine Media Podcast Network. I created that because my students, once they got their shows up, they said, we want to keep working with you. What do you have? And I said, well, let me make something. So I created the podcast network, and it's where every month I continue to coach with you as a group, and I teach you guys the most current strategies for growing and monetizing and scaling your show, for getting on bigger shows, for guesting, how to create your messaging so it's sharp and attracting the right people. We cover all the deep stuff. And I do that because I want you in a community with podcasters. I don't want you to pod fade. I don't want your show to fail. I want you to keep growing and have success. And being in a community with podcasters is super valuable because you can work with them, you can collaborate with them, you can share ideas with them, and then you continue coaching with me as well. And so that you get your first year's membership into my network for free included in this 2-day jumpstart. So as you can see, it has a ton included. I already shared with you about the Setup for Success call, the 2 days of coaching, the first year's membership into the podcast network, and then the momentum booster call at the end, the follow-up call. So those are kind of the program details, how we make this happen. So again, here's kind of a visual layout. The podcast planner sheets are included for free. The workbook included for free, $400 worth. The digital course is valued at $2,500 is what I've been told I should be charging for it. I don't charge that much, but I should be. And that is super valuable. And then the first year's network membership is also included for free. So this is so much value here. I think this number is actually incorrect. It's super valuable. It's almost $3,000 worth of value included for free. So overall, between everything, now I've been told by coaches that I should be charging more for my program. The 2-day coaching, they tell me I should be charging at least $7,000 for. I'm not going to charge that much, at least not now, because I want to make it something that people can afford to do. The digital course, now all this value, the planner sheets, podcast network, and you guys can see 97, 104, it's over $10,000 worth of value that you guys are getting in this program. It's priced at $49.97. But since you're here today with the $1,000 discount, it's only $39.97. And I have monthly payments as an option. And so this is an incredible, incredible opportunity. Again, I think someone's unmuted over there. Again, I keep it super low, which I know low is relative depending on who you are, but I'm making it as doable as possible for what you're getting, because I want you to be able to do this. I would have jumped at the chance to do this when I was getting started. So if you are interested, here's how you can get a hold of the discount for today. It's only available for 48 hours because the webinar was only for 2 days. So the discount's available for 48 hours. So if you email me, or you can drop it in the chat, I don't know if you want to put your info there or not, but if you drop in the chat and say, I'm in, let's get on your calendar, give me your name, your email, and your phone number, or you can email me, jen@jobawithjenpodcast.com. You can email me and let me know I'm in. If you send me that message or drop that info in the chat, I will communicate with you about getting on my calendar. That way you will secure the $1,000 discount, okay? Now, if you bought the VIP pass that you should have gotten updates about in your email, that was a $17 VIP pass. If you get that, then the discount does not expire. So you can use that discount whenever you're ready to coach together. So that VIP pass is, you'll see that you've got links in your email for that. And so that includes the replay to this. It includes an additional free training on your podcast identity, and it includes the discounts for this program as well. So there is an additional offer that I also included. If you join in the next 24 hours, when I say join, I mean get on my calendar so we can talk on the phone. Because I know this is a big jump and I want to make sure you're the right fit. I don't coach with just everybody. I want to make sure you're the right fit and that I'm the right fit for you. But if you get on my calendar in 24 hours, then you get this bonus ChatGPT mini course. And it's where I teach you how to use, it's just a mini training, but I teach you some important keys of how you can create content for your podcast, literally in minutes, how you can multi-purpose your content for lots of platforms and uses. That alone saves hours of time and helps you get online more quickly. How you can create social media posts. Remember I said social media helps you with your downloads. And then also how to generate income. Like so many ideas how you can use chat to help save you so much time. And so that's why I included it. Chat was not actually a thing when I started coaching podcasters. And so I've added it to the repertoire because it has become such an asset. So if you're still not sure if this is for you, then the answer is yes, this is for you. If you're ready to dig deep, do the work, and just walk with me as your coach to help you make your dream podcast happen, then it is for you. If you're tired of wasting money and you just want your show up like yesterday, this is for you. I can help you do that. If you can see how podcasting creates an incredible platform for changing your life, having your own heroes on your show, building your brand, expanding your business, serving more people with the message that's inside of you, then yes, this is totally for you. You totally should start a podcast. It literally will change. It has changed my life. It has literally changed my life. I can't even tell you how many cool people I have in my phone now just from podcasting. Now, if this is something that you're just maybe a hobbyist, you just kind of toyed with the idea, you're not really sure, like, it sounds like a lot of work, it might not be for you, at least not right now. So consider, but if you're like, I think this could be it, then just get on my calendar and we can talk through your questions. We can figure out. I mentioned, maybe it was yesterday, I mentioned one of my former clients who I went through this 2-day coaching with. They, Tony and Lamari of HGTV's Battle on the Mountain, they heard me when I was on the Sean Bowles podcast, and they looked me up online and hired me right away. They were like, we need your help, because they had a TV show that was going to be launching last January. And I said, let's get your podcast started, because they're also marriage mentors and they wanted to have material out there that could help the general public that may look them up. And so this next slide is the video of when they hit publish. We had been working together for hours. They hit publish, and this was their reaction. Well, how do you feel, girls?
Feels so surreal. We get it. Yeah, it feels weird. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited for you.
All that. I don't know if the audio came through, but they were like, you did this. We did this. They were so excited. It was so much fun. So I want you to imagine, we're almost done here. Imagine when you will finally be able to tell people, I have a podcast. You should listen to my podcast. That's one of my favorite things. I carry stickers and business cards with me, and I'm like, you should listen to my podcast. And people immediately, they're like, oh, you have a podcast? It's just so much fun. And then, but what makes it more fun is that you get messages from strangers and friends who listen to your show, and they share their heart about how it has impacted their life in a positive way. One of my episodes helped a couple heal their marriage. They're both in ministry, and now their kid feels the ministry call to be a pastor. They were going to get a divorce, but they listened to an episode, connected with my guest, saved their marriage. He gave his life to Jesus. I mean, totally just from an episode I recorded. Like, that is incredible. That is worth all of the work, right? Imagine when you have a bunch of authors and experts, media personalities, like maybe your own personal heroes, in your phone, and they're one of your friends now because you had them on your podcast. It literally is an incredible way to connect. Imagine building trust with your audience in a way that's so personal and intimate. It's like having a personal conversation. They will feel like they know you, right? It's just it's just beautiful. So with all of that, if you would like to get on a call with me to ask your questions, save an additional $1,000, get on my calendar. And that's just from send the email, let me know, and we'll get you on my calendar. Your time slot may not be till next week, but if you get on my calendar in the next 24 hours, then you can go ahead and utilize this discount. I think 48 hours is actually what I said. And I'm only taking a couple of students right now because the holidays are coming up and I want to make sure I'm able to give you my good attention. And so with all of that, I wanted to open up the floor. If you guys have any questions, we're a couple minutes past 10, but I wanted to go ahead and see if any of y'all had any questions about anything that I covered and about the program. Elaine said she had to go, but she's interested in being on the podcast. Okay, cool. I love seeing y'all. Do not use Apple AirPods. Thank you, Elaine. Don't use those Apple AirPods.